Isn't it so nice? Polluting industry as far as the eye can see. Just put it off in the corner of your map and forget about it, right? You need it to satisfy jobs in your city and maintain growth, but nobody wants to live next to a stinky industrial zone. These areas are some of the hardest parts in the map to get right, and today we're going to attempt to do just that. Get it right. With a little bit of help from Google Earth and some rules I've made based off of what I see in the real world, I'm going to attempt to create an industrial zone that fits seamlessly into our city. Afterwards, we're going to start developing out a new neighborhood across the river to expand our city and bring in more population. If you liked the video, remember to leave a like and a comment letting me know how I did. If you didn't like the video, leave a comment letting me know what I did wrong. All the engagement helps me stay tuned into what you guys are enjoying. So, without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get these roads laid out that are going to be leading towards our industrial zone. We've got two things we're going to be adding to this industrial zone, which the city needs pretty badly. We need a water treatment plant and we need a road maintenance depot. The road maintenance depot is pretty important. We've got a lot of roads that have been around for a little while now that are just in terrible condition in the city. So this is going to help us out a lot with making sure that our roads are nice and maintained. The water treatment plant is going to provide two things for us. So it's going to provide some sewage processing, and then it's also going to turn that into clean drinking water for the city. So that's going to provide two different services that we need. Other than that, we're just going to add some warehouses, which will provide a few extra jobs and just serve some of the industries that we have in the city where they need warehouse space. Then we're going to get the rail depot set up, which I want the rail in the city to have a bigger impact and a bigger footprint than it does right now. And this is just going to be the first step in getting the rail infrastructure set up in this city. You can see I've gone through in Road Builder and made a custom highway road which has zoning on it, so I can place these buildings onto the highway roads. These industrial zones, it doesn't really make much sense for them to have sidewalks, and so I went ahead and used the highway roads for these, which I think is a nice look. We're going to be adding a few just little alleyways mixed in here just to give us a little bit more space to build buildings on. This is actually pretty inspired by the water treatment facility that's in Colorado Springs. You can find it sort of off the highway, a little bit farther from downtown. And it's got this really interesting road layout around it where it's got these winding little roads and it's got little warehouses around it and whatnot. And so I wanted to inspire the build slightly off of that. We're going pretty heavy on the detail for this area. I wanted to make sure, like I said in the intro, that I was going to be getting it right, that I was going to be providing a realistic and interesting look for this industrial area here. So I'm going to be going pretty heavy with the detail. If you caught my last episode with the concrete surfaces pack, I will be adding those later in the episode, but at this point in the recording, I hadn't actually released that pack yet, so I'm just using some of the services that we already had available on PDX Mods. Later in the episode, I'll be showcasing those off whenever we start creating the neighborhood that rides up next to this industrial zone. You can see as I start to detail this little lot here that since this is on a slope, this whole facility is on a pretty pronounced hill for the most part. The decals aren't really conforming to the terrain very well. That's one of the limitations to building on slopes in this game, is that the decals aren't going to really conform to that slope perfectly a lot of the times. So I'm going through and placing some surfaces as well to get the look that I wanted for this area. And I actually really like the way that this turned out. I might have to use the surface stains a little bit more often just to get a little bit more granular control over the shapes and sizes of these stains. There are quite a few challenges that we had to go through to get this sloped terrain to work, and it really is worth it in a lot of cases for you to work with sloped terrain because it just gives a certain amount of verticality and a certain amount of interest to the look of your city whenever you build on sloped terrain instead of just flattening it out. Even though, I know I'm a big proponent of flattening stuff out. If you've seen a lot of my videos, it's usually like one of the first steps I do is flatten the terrain. It definitely makes things a lot easier, but I think it's really rewarding whenever you take the time to get the slope working. Here we're just placing just a couple more, props and stuff for this little yard here. Nothing too fancy. I just want to give, a little bit of detail and, a little bit of interest to these little lots here. I didn't want to load all of these areas up with buildings. Kind of like what we were talking about before with the parking lots in the city. Industrial zones aren't going to be completely loaded up with buildings, wall to wall. lot to lot. There's going to be a lot of open space where you have to store things, and where you have certain areas where work is being done, and so it's you have to have a sort of a balance. I guess this would be a good portion of the video to talk about my new road surfaces pack. So I released a pack on PDX Mods. It's the Road Textures Surface Pack, which has a pretty medium-sized collection of just asphalt concrete surfaces. It has 5 or 6 different pavement surfaces, and it has 1 sidewalk surface. The main reason that I made this pack was because I just wanted more surfaces for the roads in this city. I've been in the habit of placing down surfaces over our roads to give them a more varied look, and I felt like we needed some more surfaces, or at least I needed some more surfaces for this city, as placing the same surfaces over and over again was starting to get a little bit repetitive. So I went ahead and made that pack. Now, just because the surfaces were made specifically for putting over roads doesn't mean that they don't work really well for other things like concrete parking lots and little storage yards and stuff like this. Like I said, I was recording this before I made that pack, so I'm not using it yet, but I do go back and replace pretty much all of these concrete surfaces with my new concrete surfaces. I really like them. Obviously, I made them, so they're pretty much exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to be using them quite a lot in a lot of these builds here, just to showcase them off, and also just because they're, I made them pretty much for myself. There's also a sidewalk surface in the pack, which it might be one of my favorites, or if not my favorite surface that I made. It's essentially just the classic American sidewalk that has sort of a tiled nature to it. And it fits really, really perfectly on just about any sidewalk in an American build, other than like maybe some sort of main street or something where it's going to be more fancy with some brick or some tiles or something. But it's a pretty generic, just sidewalk surface, which you'll be seeing pretty frequently in the neighborhood build that's coming up after this industrial zone. So if you want to see that, you can either skip ahead, or you can wait till we start building that, and that'll be showcased in that video. There's also a video that I released a little bit ago that just showcases all of the surfaces in a really detailed sort of small town build. So if you're really into the small town builds and you want to see a good showcase of those surfaces, definitely check that video out, and I'll link it in the description here so you can find it. Right now we're just working on a little bit of these surface parking lots. Like before, there is an elevation difference between these two areas, so I wanted to accommodate for that elevation difference and also accentuate that elevation difference a little bit. So I have these 2 parking lots that are at 2 different elevations, and then I have this little walking trail, which the first thing that I wanted the walking trail for was so I could build a retaining wall around the parking lot. But then also it ends up just being functional, so you can hop on that trail if you go onto the parking lot that's on the lower area, and it will lead you up a ramp that will get you to the rest of the industrial park. So it's kind of like a little functional thing for all of the employees that will be parking in this parking lot in this industrial park. Now we're just doing a little bit of detailing. You don't want to do all concrete in your industrial areas. Obviously it depends. There's a whole bunch of different things that you could take inspiration from. But in a lot of areas, there is going to be nature in industrial areas. It's not just complete concrete everywhere. It's going to be a little bit less maintained a lot of the times. And so using like these surfaces, like these Sully's Riverbed surfaces, which are some of my favorite ways to just add like a little bit of detail and a little bit of look of less maintained grass in areas. So I really enjoy that. And then I'm just going through and spamming some bushes on the edges of the retaining walls and things like that, and then going through and placing some trees. Here in a few minutes though, we are going to be moving on to the live play section, where I'm going to go over this in a little bit more detail. So I'm just going to leave you with a little bit of music and a little bit of a time lapse, and I will be back for the live play here in a few minutes. So as you can probably tell, there's quite a few things that I've done off camera since the time lapse has ended. Once I got done with the Rail Depot, I went ahead and reached out to Tigon. He's released a lot of the rail infrastructure packs that are on PDX mods, and he's very knowledgeable about trains and rail and whatnot. So I wanted to reach out to him and get his opinion on if this Rail Depot is realistic in the way that it is laid out. And we were able to, with his feedback, get some of these connections cleaned up, make it look a little bit more realistic. And then also he suggested adding this rail storage yard here on the side. So I cleared off that hill there and I placed this retaining wall instead, and it allowed me to have 4 tracks here for storage on the outside. I placed a few train props here to populate our yard, and then I added some of the graffiti onto the train cars, pretty much exclusively, if I'm correct, from Booty Addicts. Graffiti packs that he's put out on PDX mods. He's put out a ton of graffiti packs on PDX mods, so you should definitely check those out if you haven't already. And this is just looking super, super nice. I love the retaining wall. I love all the graffiti and having the trains out here on display and whatnot. And it's all just looking super, super good and a lot better than what I had before I reached out to Tigon. So I'm really loving this section of our rail depot here. So now we've got sort of a situation here where we've got all of our connections going inside the rail depot. We've got one bypass here, so the trains can, bypass the rail depot. They don't have to go through it. And then we've got our storage yard, and that's pretty much it for the rail depot. We've got the treatment plant, the water treatment plant here. We've got 2 water treatment plants, actually. We've got the vanilla one, and then we've got the Japan one, which I kind of wanted to just pass as the same water treatment plant. It's just, a little bit more on the other side. I've also got this park maintenance depot here because we did need to do some maintenance on our parks just to improve the attractiveness and whatnot of them. So I figured this would be a good spot to put the park maintenance depot. And then over here, we have the road maintenance depot. So like I was saying in the intro, we really needed that road maintenance depot as a lot of our roads were getting pretty run down. And so this is going to be put to good use, repairing all of our roads in the city. At this point, I've started the road layout for the neighborhood that we're going to be adding in here. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to populate this entire neighborhood in this episode because I'm running a little bit short on time here, but essentially what we've got here is it splits off. So we've got this main road that goes directly through our downtown here, and it goes over the highway, over the river, and then it splits off into this couplet here. And then that's going to lead straight through our town and then off into the distance where we'll put maybe some more smaller towns and things like that off in the distance. And then we've got a couple of main roads going through here. So we've got this main 2-lane road here going through the middle. And then we've got this 4-lane sort of strode situation going here. So we've got some dedicated turn lanes. We've got a middle turn lane, which aren't functional, but I was able to build them in Road Builder, which I think looks really nice. And I already replaced all of these roads with the surfaces that I have from my new road surfaces pack. So they've all got the new roads on them. I haven't gone through and placed the sidewalks yet because I want to place the buildings first and figure out what sort of sidewalks would work based off the buildings that I have. And so that's about it for this live play section. I've just got a couple of extra little yards here. Like I've got this like ore storage, dirt storage yard. I'm not sure exactly what they're storing. I just wanted to add like some sort of interesting little storage yard. There's actually one a lot like this next to the water treatment plant in Colorado Springs if you look on Google Earth. And so I kind of wanted to just add that as a little bit of a nod to how it actually is in real life. Maybe in a smaller scale, that is. Other than that, we've just got storage yards and some warehouses and whatnot to provide extra jobs to this area. But let's go ahead and get to work on this neighborhood here and get back into the time lapse. So as you can tell, we're just getting started on placing down our buildings in this little neighborhood. We're starting with the main street here with this 4-lane road. We already did the roads and we already did the surfaces and whatnot before the time lapse started, which I showed in the live play there. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out what I want the skyline to look like. This is going to be sort of another one of its own contained downtown centers. Normally, you would find these farther away from each other in real life, but since we're doing a scaled down build, these are going to be pretty close to each other, the different downtowns and different little sections of the city. So like I said, I'm just getting the skyline figured out. It's not going to be very big, obviously. It's going to be like a pretty small little area, but I wanted to get just a little bit of a skyline going. And then for the most part, then we just have to detail in all the spaces in between all of our, more prominent, bigger buildings. And I'm really loving these surfaces that I put out. They're just really perfect for the build that I'm going for. You can see them in the parking lot here and on the alleyway roads. I place them, and they just have such a more unique texture to them. I feel I don't have to add as many stains and cracks and different things like that on top of them to sort of cover up an unrealistic texture, which, I may be coming off a little bit harsh here. I actually don't really mind the vanilla texture. I think if you work around the vanilla texture in a certain stylized way, I think it looks really good. There's a lot of builders out there that don't really use a whole lot of decals and don't really try to go like photorealistic per se, but their builds are like really gorgeous. And so I think for like a certain stylized look, you don't really need to like be going crazy on the surfaces and the decals and stuff like that. But this is the kind of the style that I like to build in. And so having these surfaces that just have a little bit more grit to them just really, really helps me out in not having to overuse decals and then make my streets look like they're like, haven't been maintained in 20 years or something like that. I can make newer looking areas that still look photorealistic, or at least as photorealistic as we can get with the tools we have in City Skylines right now. Yeah, just doing some detailing, just stain decals, trees, the usual sort of stuff that we usually do in these neighborhoods. We're doing a lot more row houses in this area. I was really enjoying the row house vibe. A lot of these northeastern row houses just look so good. You got the little one on the left there with like the brick and the roofs and like the sloped roofs and stuff. And then you've got those more ones with the curvy entrances and stuff like that, which they're just super, super nice. I love the Northeast pack. I think it's my favorite backpack by far. Now we're placing this ExtraI18n asset, which is just a lovely asset. I've been looking for a place to put this for a while in this build, and I figured it fit really nicely here on this corner next to the sort of, I don't even know what this is. It's more of a stroad, I guess, going through this little area here. It's not really a road, but it's not a street. But this, you see these hotels everywhere in the US, and so I might end up placing multiple of these in different locations around the place, because you really will just see identical hotels all over the US, with the certain brands and stuff like that. But we moved past that pretty quickly. Now I'm just detailing some more of these back alleys and getting some of these parking lots situated here. Doing some more of these tire marking decals. I love these tire marking decals. They look super, super great, and Sully did a great job with those. And this, we're not going to expand this neighborhood out too much because I am running out of time for recording this episode. I want to get this episode out pretty quickly so I can start working on Civ Skylines afterwards, because I'm really excited about the build that I'm going to be doing in Civ Skylines, and I think it's going to turn out really nice. So definitely look forward to that releasing here very soon. We're about to be done with this time lapse though, so I'm going to jump into a live play here, and I'll see you there. And here we are now at the end of the video. I really like getting these wide shots of everything that we've built so far. It really puts it into perspective just how expansive this city is growing, and it's looking super, super nice. I'm really enjoying how we have that little skyline in the background, and I think it's going to look even better once we get that entire neighborhood built out and whatnot. But for right now, we've just got a little bit of a sneak peek of how that neighborhood's going to look like with it being, about halfway done. Now that we're up to about 8,000 population, I think. Let me look. Oh, messed up our time of day. There we go. We're starting to see a little bit more traffic, but we're not seeing a ton of traffic. I might re-enable the traffic adjuster mod so we're not getting any lowering of our traffic amounts. I know that City Skylines does that. I don't know if they do that at the point where you're at 8,000 population, or if that's something that's reserved for when you have more population, but I really do want to see just about as much traffic as possible around here. It really just brings the city to life. We are seeing a decent amount of people over here at this junction here, which I'll probably have to upgrade at some point. If we're going to continue expanding in this direction here, we're going to see a lot of traffic hitting this bridge here, And we'll probably have to add, maybe another exit here and stuff like that, just to give these citizens, some extra areas where they can get to where they're going. But let's zoom in over here. So you've already seen this sort of industrial area in the last time lapse, but I'll just kind of pan over it a little bit here. There hasn't been any changes really since the last time lapse. It's all just about the same as it was before. And then we've got this start of this mini downtown that we built here, and I think it's looking really, really nice. I'm really enjoying how everything is looking so far, with it being nice and green in between the buildings, and then having these mostly brick buildings. I tried to mess around with the colors with the color picker tool and get just the right sort of like brick sort of textures throughout all these buildings, and I think it's looking really nice. And I think this skyline is looking quite quaint with the backdrop of the mountains behind it and everything like that. And it looks like, is that a plane that we got there? Oh yeah, we got some planes in the sky. I'm gonna have to build an airport at some point in this build. We've got quite a lot of buildable area, and I'm thinking at some point in the series, once we're done building this area out, I want to build an even bigger city in this area. And so I think we will put an airport somewhere in this general area whenever we're ready to do that. Down this direction, I think I want to just do smaller towns. I want to do some more smaller town builds, and so we've got plenty of space to do some small towns in this little area here. I might sort of readjust some of the things around here, maybe add some more trees and stuff, maybe add some more natural blockers and stuff like that, because if we added like a small town like right in the middle of this field here, it probably wouldn't look very natural with just having like a small town and then just nothing around it. So maybe we'll have to add like some farmland or something like that, or we'll have to add some extra geography to accommodate for that. But for the most part, I think we're looking really, really good so far with how this city is expanding. I'm really loving the road layout that we have here with this couplet. I thought the couplet was really interesting. I'm not 100% sure about all of these intersections here, if all of them are really necessary. I don't want to funnel all of the traffic right here, but I don't know if I want to have as many intersections as I do in this on this couplet here. So let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions or any advice about that. I'd love to hear some advice on how you guys usually manage your couplets and stuff like that, and how many intersections you think should be there. This industrial area I feel like is looking really, really nice on this hill, and it's looking super nice, especially when you zoom out. For some reason, when you zoom out, it's got that, I don't know, it just looks really, really nice sitting right there next to the comms tower, telecom tower and whatnot. And so yeah, I think we're looking super, super good. I'm loving this downtown. This is the first thing that we built here, and it's still one of my favorite areas in the city. I feel like it's just got so much charm and so much, interest and stuff like that, with this parking lot and then the street going through it and whatnot, and all the surface work that I did on these sidewalks, I think is looking super good these days. And we've got a few walkers here. I think it also depends a lot on the time of day. So right now, I don't think we're in a time of day in which there's going to be a lot of people out. Sometimes I pan over here and it's actually quite busy in this downtown section. We've got like big crowds of people walking and stuff like that. But at the moment, there's not really much going on because I think it's just the time of day that it is. But that is gonna be about it. I can't think of anything else to really talk about or really showcase for this build. I know this one got cut short just a little bit. I really wanted to expand out and finish this neighborhood in this episode, but we're just running a little bit low on time, so I'm going to reserve that for the next episode, and then maybe do an expansion in another area as well afterwards. Maybe we'll expand in this area and start filling this area out in the next episode. But like I said, that's going to be pretty much it. So if you liked the video, I would appreciate a like. If you want to see more, consider subscribing, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good one, everybody.